Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. Let's law better. Together we explore topics of interest to legal operations. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Want to get the most from this conversation? Ask questions, comment, like, follow, say hello. In short, engage. And don't forget to have a blast. Shaking up the legal world takes a lot of elbow grease. So let's make sure we've got each other's backs along the way. Let's begin. Here's your host, Olga Mack.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. We Can Law Better edition, where we talk to legal operators or folks who are improving legal operations. You might have heard we are also on the road show to celebrate this book and almost 50 contributors who made this book possible. And today I'm going to have a repeat guest who I am sure you heard of. And if you haven't, I wonder how that happened to you. I can't wait to have this conversation. He is amazing. He's absolutely fantastic. He's the one and only Colin Levy. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. You know, I love having this conversation with you because I could either schedule myself 3 months into the future to have a meeting with you, or I can schedule you right away for a show and catch up with you for an hour. And I think the latter is an easier route, hence why you're here for many reasons, including because I couldn't wait to catch up with you. And if I have to write a book or edit a book to get there, I am absolutely game. Colin, please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Colin Levy. I am a legal tech author, co-author, writer, advocate. I also am director of legal and evangelist for Malbec, a leading contract lifecycle management company. I've been talking and writing about legal tech for quite some time at this point, and it really has become my world, my community. And I love to inform, inspire, and support others with respect to it. So I couldn't be happier to be here with you, my good friend Olga. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise. And I think the Mutual Admiration Society is quite long. There's a few folks who are expressing their love for you and can't wait for us to have this conversation. Colin, I would like to situate people in kind of where you are today. I know you're sharing a lot of thought leadership. You edit, co-edit, write numerous books. You're probably the only person who, like myself, is writing multiple books at the same time in this field. So I see you. I love you for that very reason. It's like staring in the mirror. What else do you do today?
So, well, in addition to writing a lot, and my fingers are very tired, so I think I am going to need to take a little bit of a break from typing for a little while at least. But in addition to that, as I said, I am the legal leader of Malbec, so I assist them with all things legal related, whether it's contracts or data privacy or product development or sales or marketing efforts. I also do a fair bit of travel to conferences and sometimes even speak at those conferences. I go on webinars, I go on podcasts, and of course, I post frequently on my favorite platform, LinkedIn, as well as on X/Twitter/ whatever you want to call it.
Something that Elon owns. I think that's what we're gonna.
Right.
That's what we're gonna call it. You're getting some hearts, so let me put that up for you, so you're feeling the love. And I'm gonna ask you what I ask everyone, so folks are situated where you come from. Before you got up in the morning and decided that you want to be influencing this field of legal tech and legal operations and being a legal leader at Malbec, how did you get to be where you are today? What was the scenic route?
So yeah, it definitely was a. I definitely took the scenic route, and it involved starting off by just observing the fact that I seem to be a little bit in a space all my own because I saw this disconnect when I first started working as a lawyer between the tech world and the legal world, and thought, well, that was odd because tech was influencing and impacting other industries, and yet the legal industry seemed to act as if it was somehow immune to the rest of the world, which it wasn't. But I certainly seemed that way to me at first. So what I ended up doing to kind of help, I guess, make myself feel a little bit better and hopefully be able to understand that I wasn't the only one thinking like this way, I looked for others who were trying to do something about it, whether they were teaching, writing, speaking, or creating in sort of the intersection of tech and law. And thankfully, I found a number of those people, started having conversations with them, learning about their journeys. And then eventually, after having enough of those conversations, I started sharing some of those sort of lessons I had learned from speaking with these folks through interviews on my personal website as well as on LinkedIn. And sort of one thing led to another, and I continued to post, I continued to have more conversations, and I just continued to learn. And bit by bit, I slowly was realizing I was embedding myself within this really dynamic and supportive community. And I kind of have been on that journey ever since. And I have not found a community that's been quite so inspiring, supportive, and encouraging as this community. And that's why I can't get enough of it and why I'm so fervently in favor of supporting it and helping it grow.
Let's focus on role of technology in your legal career. You've been leading legal departments. You now working at a well-known technology company. I think it's fair to say that legal tech played a role in your professional life, not just as sort of someone who has conversation in communities and influencing decisions, but somebody who is also very actively practicing law and on the forefront of solving business challenges every day. So, what has it been?
I think one thing that really helped me see legal tech for what it is, as a working lawyer and legal professional, I really saw the need for people like myself to be able to speak the language of business. What I mean by that more specifically is to be able to understand not just how the business operated, but how decisions were made. And quite frankly, that was those decisions were made based upon data, whether it's financial data or other types of data. And so to be able to really kind of be a part of the business and be a valued member of the team and get legal and get the leadership to listen to you, you had to understand what they cared about and how they thought about things. And so that meant really understanding how the business operated, how it was being driven by data, what its mission and goals were, and how what you were doing could impact and influence that mission and those goals. And legal tech helps you get there by helping you become more data driven and become more visible in terms of both what you're doing and in terms of how you're working with others in terms of collaborating and really working on things together rather than as traditionally been done in many legal departments, kind of being an island unto yourself, which really doesn't help anyone and just makes you seen as sort of a necessary evil in an organization rather than a value add in that organization.
Yeah, I usually say that business speaks the language of finance and money. But I would say now increasingly data is becoming either a second required language, if not the first. And then frankly, it's a more productive way to unify the company, including bringing legal into the fold of not being the necessary evil, not creating toxic assets, but actually creating valuable assets and being at the table and creating something of value that relates to revenue and risk minimization. You spend quite a lot of time in this book in chapter 10 talking about the relationship between legal operations and legal tech, and data is sort of that language for you that unifies it. Practically speaking, because I would like people to take practical takeaways from this conversation that they can go back and implement and make their life better from day one. What is the one two things that they can do to make this data language part of their vocabulary and add value to their business?
Yeah, so it's hard to sort of narrow it down, I think, to one or two things, but I'll try my best. I think the one thing you can certainly do is start really understanding the data that's, for example, in your contracts. And I mention that because contracts really are how businesses run. They're kind of the lifeblood of a business. And they contain a lot of valuable data that often goes unnoticed or not tracked or not acted upon. And that can range from a variety of things, anything from renewal dates, you want to get ahead of your customer/client and see what you can do to make their experience better and, of course, renew, to tracking key dates such as obligations, i.e., you need to perform certain service by a certain time, create something by a certain time, payment dates, when payments are due, whether it's to you or to them or both of you perhaps. In addition, there's other data points that you can track as well in terms of commonly negotiated clauses and perhaps make the negotiation faster by being able to have other fallback clauses readily available so that you can offer those right up with having to sort of, take some time to actually think it through. Tracking deal cycle times, tracking revenue, whether it be annual recurring revenue or total contract value. So there's a lot of data in your contracts that you can track, and often that can be done quite easily and practically by a contract management system. And of course, I work for a company that makes such a solution, but I'm not just saying that because of that reason. I'm saying that also because the more you can track those data points and show them and use them to drive your decision making and show what you're doing to your leadership, the more they'll value what you're doing and why you're doing it. And the why is really important, and data can really help you get there, and in a way that leadership and other functions of the business can understand and act upon.
Yeah. I mean, as somebody who used to lead a CLM and very much understand the importance, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and not because you're just at a contract company today. It's a very interesting space that is being very thinly sliced for a lot of reasons. There are CLMs, there are intelligence company, there are negotiations company, there are sort of specific to vertical company. Is because contracts do in fact have a lot of information. They do have a lot of term related information and basic information, but they have so much more than that: relationships, information about operations of various businesses. You can do a whole lot if you know how to slice and dice it. And you can use various tools that make sense in the context of your business, that may include a CLM, an intelligence company, negotiation, or something else entirely. Contracts is a massive continent, and depending on the problem you're dealing with, it may be useful to conquer it using different tools. And I invite folks to explore it. There's a few questions in the audience, and I do want to put them up. But before I do this, I maybe will invite you to give me maybe another example, maybe not from contracts, because everyone knows that we both love contracts. And since we do other things, what other places, whether it's in a law firm or in house, where data is sort of a unifying language and it's worth it for a legal operator or a legal leader or a business leader to get a handle of that, so that through data they can have business insights to really do whatever it is they're doing better?
Sure. So another area that I think is ripe with a number of different solutions and also ripe with a lot of use cases for data-driven decision making is legal research and litigation analytics. And what I'm talking about really are tools that allow you to use publicly available case law and decisions that have been made, as well as secondary research, to really formulate a more data-driven strategy with respect to either avoiding potential litigation or formulating a brief for how to go about litigating a matter, or even thinking about the predicted likelihood of you winning a potential litigation, all based off of case data. And there's a lot of tools available that can help you with that. And I think it's a really exciting area because it's making use of research and case law that you wouldn't think normally would be ripe with perhaps data points, but they are. And those can be used to help you write better briefs, help you come up with better solutions to solve potentially litigated matters, and also help formulate it. Suppose you're in a law firm, help formulate a strategy for a litigation that you have been engaged with, and you really want to have a good chance of success. Well, you can actually use some of these tools to help you get there by looking at prior decisions that are made both in that court and perhaps even by that same judge that you're going before, and really formulate your brief and your strategy around exactly what has been done before and how well that's worked. And that can be really valuable because it can help you save time, save money, and provide perhaps your client a greater probability of being successful, as opposed to in the past where a lawyer basically just said, "Hey, I've been doing this for 35 years. I know what I'm doing. Just trust me." As a client now, you don't really have to take someone at their word. You can actually ask them about what tools they're using to help provide some data to back up what they're saying about how good they are at potentially winning a case.
Yeah, those I am with you. Those tools on the research, litigation, and e-discovery are super exciting. I like the way you sort of inventoried how data in this book underneath all of those tools and capabilities to help you one law better because that's important. But then on top of it, you can also still extract all of kinds of business insights, including from briefs and various pleadings and research to really operate your business more responsibly, better, and frankly, much more profitably. We have a few questions from the audience. You will be surprised there is an AI question. This is where you act absolutely shocked, Colin. I will, I'll ask. I like Jeff's question. It's a great question about what is sort of the biggest area. We will definitely get to that question because I think it's an important question. But let me ask you sort of an overarching question about AI and explosion of it, and kind of how do you see where this is going? And then you should anticipate a second question, exactly what Jeff is asking around kind of where you think the biggest opportunity. But let's talk about AI sort of generally. What has changed and where are we going?
So I think what has happened is, and well, let me back up and just simply state that artificial intelligence as a general idea and concept is not new at all, nor is the sort of the basic
Oh,
technology new.
absolutely not new. I've been in the field for now over a decade. Unless you think decade is a very new thing, it's been around for a while.
Absolutely. But what is new is generative AI, and essentially what that is the ability to actually generate new types of content through interacting with it in sort of a human-like way, even though you're definitely not dealing with with a human at all, nor anything even that resembles one. But what we're seeing, I think, with the rise of generative AI is it's now kind of becoming an embedded element of a lot of tools that already have existed. So it's basically augmenting existing tools and also leading to the creation of tools that are more solely based on generative AI. But I think overall, where we're at is we're seeing this integration of a new technology into existing tools. And we've been through this before. This is not kind of a new evolution, but this is definitely happening again. And I think what's exciting for many people is that this is one of the more powerful technologies that have existed in quite some time. And it's incredibly accessible for most people. And that also is something new, as opposed to older technologies, which perhaps had a bit more of a steeper learning curve or were harder to use or required having some degree of fluency in coding or programming. With generative AI, you really don't need any of that, although certainly having some idea of how generative AI tools work can certainly help you become a better user of them. But that being said, as I said before, really we're just seeing an integration of generative AI into existing tools and helping them helping them be better and helping you be better at your job, whatever that job may be.
Yeah, I loved. It was more accessible, easier content, new content generating with new skills, new possibilities. So let me ask Jeff's question. With all of that newness, not that AI is new, but that new capability of new content generation, what is sort of great applications for that? Because you don't you it's not always useful to generate new content in law. Sometimes you have to deal with precedent. There is this stubborn truth where precedent still matters. That's why legal education is important. But what are the opportunities and what are sort of biggest areas of improvement that we can use this tool to law better?
Yeah, I think, one area where I think legal tech could be doing a better job and/or perhaps there's an opportunity for more tools to exist is within sort of what I would call a sort of administrative area of the practice of law, and that's with respect to workflow management and matter management. There are a number of tools that exist out there, but I think that there is a need for tools that are more powerful and more easily integratable into a company's existing set of tools. And the reason why I say that is because lawyers in general are not very good administrators. I mean, they're not very good at kind of managing their own matters and workflows. They're very good at kind of the detailed analysis work, but in terms of kind of actually operating a business and or delegating and or understanding kind of who is doing what at what time, they're not always so great at that, which is why there are tools that exist. And I do think that there is definitely a need for these tools to be better utilized by both law firms and legal departments, as well as potentially more tools in the space as well, because I think there's a number of sectors of legal tech that seem to get all the attention and others don't get nearly as much enough attention. And I would say workflow matter management are two of those areas that perhaps could use a little more attention and love.
Yeah. Even if you are a lawyer that is really good at admin stuff, there's this concept of, comparative advantage. And, there is a reason to specialize in what you uniquely can give value and optimize that and allow other people to, or other technologies or tools to help you with that so that you can do more where you uniquely add value. Even if you are really good at admin stuff, because not every lawyer is bad at admin stuff, not every lawyer is bad with math, and not every lawyer is bad with people. I think we, as humans in population, we're in a spectrum of all some kind, but there is a very compelling benefit of specializing what you're uniquely good at giving value, and I think this is where tools can definitely help you with that. Besides that example, Colin, are there any other examples or specific things, whether it's in house or law firms, where this is going to be a big impact in the way we law?
Yeah, I think that an area that I mentioned earlier, litigation analytics, whether it's predictive analytics or just existing data analytics, I think is going to be a really powerful area for law firms as well as for legal departments. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, and I say this as someone who actually wanted nothing to do with litigation and still wants nothing to do with litigation or courtrooms at all. But I think it's a fascinating area from a tech perspective. But the reason why I say it is because, you know, litigation traditionally has been a game, has been somewhat of a game, two parties battling it out and trying to kind of, get, rulings in their favor to proceed and win and kind of be engaged in all sorts of kind of trickery and language games, try to kind of make a better argument and what have you. But now with litigation analytics tools, you can actually not have to rely so much on sort of that showmanship as much as relying upon the data that exists in terms of cases that have been decided, arguments that have been either been successful or not successful, and that can inform your strategy. And therefore, for your client, you can tell your client, hey, look, I know you want to, litigate this, but based off of X, Y, and Z, based off of this data and these cases, I'm not sure necessarily we want to litigate this way. Or perhaps, yeah, I think we can win this, but perhaps not the way you think we can win it. And here's why. And I think clients really will appreciate that because it's more than just a lawyer kind of saying, this is my opinion. They are actually saying, well, you don't have to, it's not just my opinion. The data actually shows that this is how we should go about doing this. And that I think is very powerful because again, businesses love data, rely on data. And so if you can speak the language of data even in the litigation sense, that will, I think, bring more gravitas and bring more authenticity to what you're saying and credibility as well, which can go a long way when it comes to working with a client, particularly in a really tricky, sensitive area like litigation.
I love your love-hate relationship with litigation. It's like, yeah, I love it, but not love it. It's really cool, but it's a lot of trickery and a lot of confrontation. But I love it when it's data-driven, but not don't want to be part of it. It's very. I've seen. I come with you as a former litigator and a former DA. I am with you. There is sort of a pull and a push, but the tools I have seen, both sort of an e-discovery and drafting, and actually sort of real time depositions and cross examinations. I thought I would never miss the courtroom, but now I actually have been FOMOed into litigating. I'm kind of with you. I'm much more into creating value and peace and growing the pie. But the part of the strategy is just so exciting in the age of data and the AI, and I think smart people and intelligent lawyers can do so much more. And I'm not sure if the showmanship will end when you are persuading jury or judge, because you have to persuade humans, and that requires storytelling in some sort of form of showmanship, as you said, or what you call trickery, but I would say strategy. But aside from that, all of that is much more exciting with data and analytics and automation. I mean, you can just put up a better show.
Yeah,
With
no, that's really what it comes down to. And yes, by trickery, I was just kind of saying in jest. I mean, certainly there's strategy involved, but I do think that when it comes to kind of the human element, there will always be a need for that sort of putting on a better show, because humans are emotional creatures, we're driven by emotion, and technology at this point can't understand nor replicate the sort of human element in the room. And so that remains something that I think needs to be taken into account and important to be aware of.
Yeah, and we have the constitutional right to jury trial. So it is here with us to stay. A friend of mine recently walked me how she real time finds when someone testifies in the courtroom, and then real time puts excerpts and discredited the witness. And I have to say, my mind was blown. I was like, wow, I want to do that. That sounds really exciting. And she showed me some videos of what happens. And I was like, wow, I thought I would never miss litigation, but that was fun. I can definitely get into that. Coming to the end, unfortunately, I do have a few questions around sort of community building. I think this is something you and I both share, and frankly, one of many reasons why we do books like that is because it is a most fantastic way to get like-minded people in on the same page, literally, and share knowledge and build community, and sort of cross the digital transformation bridge together, holding hands, lifting the community up. Let me ask you a question. Like, how do you view this community and why you're so passionate about it?
So, I view the community as one that is multifaceted, multidisciplinary, and brings together people from a variety of backgrounds, a variety of life experiences, a variety of journeys. And that I think is really powerful because, and this is something that I've spoken about and written about before, is there is power in numbers and differences and in perspectives. And so to be part of a community that has such a wide range of different perspectives and experiences provides a lot of opportunities for learning, a lot of opportunities for growth, a lot of kind of broadening one's perspective, because it's always, I think, important to be aware that your perspective is not the only perspective that exists. And often that perspective is formulated by your own experience and lived life. And so it's important to learn from others as well. So that I think, those elements I think really make the legal tech community very special and very important. And with respect to, my passion for the space and drive to support it and inspire it and inform it, it's benefited me in many ways, including providing me with various opportunities, jobs, what have you. And for that reason, it's really important for me to want to give back and support others. And so that's in part why I'm so passionate about the space, as well as the fact that, I earlier in my life, didn't always love technology, but I've grown to love it and really, can't get enough of it. But I also am, someone who wants to make it that way for others, because it's not something here to intimidate or to induce fear. And whatever I can do to help others see the value in technology, I want to be able to do, because I was able to overcome it. And so I feel kind of almost a duty to help others uh, overcome their potential fear or reluctance around technology as well.
And big thank you for that service to the community. I really get inspired by people who show up daily and support everyone else to thrive as we go through this massive change. I think having a passion for it is very important, and frankly, more than that, showing up on a daily basis. Speaking of showing up, you and I and a few others walk the hallways of LinkedIn daily, helping folks to cross that bridge of digital transformation, not be intimidated by technology, thrive together, support each other. because there is the other side. There is a way to practice law bigger, better, faster, cheaper, and a more enjoyable way. You and I utilize social media daily. LinkedIn, I think, is our shared passion. You also venture out on Twitter occasionally, but let's talk about LinkedIn because I really love LinkedIn so much more than whatever it is Elon owns. How do you view this role? How do why what do- how do you what tools do you use to support everyone, and kind of what is what are ways you and others can educate and cross that bridge of digital transformation together using social media as a tool?
Yeah, so gosh, I could probably write a whole book about this topic.
Sorry,
At some
sorry. I it was really meant to be one big question. You can narrow it down in any way you want.
Well, I would say that, LinkedIn is a great platform for sharing content. And I have found that the best way to sort of share content is to observe what others are commenting on and posting themselves, and take a moment to ask yourself what is resonating with you and what isn't resonating with you, and what is resonating with you, figure out why, and use that to inspire yourself to either comment on the post that resonated with you, or perhaps to create your own posts as well. And so, that's one element. The other element is, I've learned to be very focused and very deliberate in what I share and what I post on LinkedIn. And that has in turn, I think, helped people know that, okay, Colin, he's going to post about LinkedIn, might post about mental health, post about being yourself. But those are the things he talks about. And so I can rely on him to be posting about those things and turn to him as someone who could be a source of inspiration and information about those topics. And so providing that sort of level of consistency and focus, I think, is a way to help people find you online and know what they're going to get from you. So that's another element of it as well. And if you're just starting out, you don't even have to just kind of post, even though I would encourage you to try. But you can just simply comment on other people's posts. That's how I started and how I learned to use the platform. And that can be a very effective way of being engaging without kind of, perhaps engaging in the more bold move of actually writing a whole post and sharing it, even though you'll likely reach that point over time if you start commenting on other people's posts, because you'll likely find yourself being inspired to want to write longer things. But it's a really powerful platform, and I can honestly say that the connections I made on that platform have been invaluable and have, been ones that I have maintained in the real world even more so than online. And so, I can't speak highly enough about the platform, how useful it is for sharing knowledge and building relationships with others.
Case in point, you and I met online well before we met in real life. And we have a few other folks joining. Thank you, Jeff, for joining. And Colin, you have a few supporters cheering for you. We unfortunately are coming to the end. So I'm going to ask the last question and I want to make it practical because I want folks to take practical things that they can take back and implement right away. If you're somebody, and I talk to a lot of somebodies who are looking into pivoting into legal operations, what is the one or two or three, however many things you can do right away to make that pivot easier and more enjoyable?
So I would say number one, learn about the space through checking out websites like the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium Clock, looking at sites like Artificial Lawyer, looking at sites like LawNext for Legal Tech News, Legal Technology Hub for kind of existing, for an overview of existing tools in the space. So that's number one. Number two is, of course, check out books like Legal Operations in the Age of AI and Data and others that can provide you with not just a lot of information, but also further resources to learn more about the space. And then number three, I would suggest kind of asking yourself, why you want to learn about legal operations, what's drawing you to that space, and use that answer to help guide you as you explore the space, because it is a large, evolving, dynamic space, and it can get a little overwhelming unless you have sort of a clear focus for yourself, a clear goal in mind with respect to why you want to explore the space.
I love your answer. And I really enjoyed this conversation. And it really saddens me to say that, Colin, we've come to the end of this conversation, not our relationship. That's the good news. And thank you so much for being here and for being there for the community. I really appreciate you showing up every day and being a friend. And thank you so much for your contribution to this little treatise. I love to show the thickness of it, not just the cover, which is also beautiful. And as part of your goodbye, I know we covered a lot of ground and this was intense and fast and furious. But what is one takeaway you want folks who are passionate about legal operations and perhaps even legal technology to take away from this conversation?
Sure. I think the number one thing is don't hesitate to reach out to me or to others to learn more about the space. I think there are a lot of folks in this space eager to help, either eager to connect with new folks and eager to build relationships. So that would be what I would say do first and foremost.
Thank you so much. So good to have you as part of this book roadshow. Again, you have a lot of folks in the audience cheering for you. I appreciate that you show up for the community every day. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Notes to My Legal Self, Let's Law Better. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Just remember, the future of law is looking pretty awesome. Let's team up and shake things up in the legal world together. See you soon.